I am going to show you now how to put the stitches that will become the sleeves of our baby sweater onto waist yarn. So at this point in my sample sweater, I am right here all the way around. So on the larger size baby sweater, it's where that bright pink metallic thread is all the way around the sweater. So you have the sleeves, the stitches of the body of your sweater, as well as the stitches of the sleeves of your sweater all on your needles at the same time. So it's almost like you've got a cape, the top of your sweater, and it doesn't really look a whole lot like a sweater at this point. So in order to take the sleeve stitches off of your needles and save them for later, what we are going to do is, following your pattern, you are going to slip the center marker that marks the V-neck of your sweater, the center front. You're going to knit the number of stitches that the pattern is telling you to. That will be half of the stitches for the front of your sweater. And then you are going to slide the stitches that will become the sleeves onto your waist yarn. With waist yarn, you want to always choose a strikingly different color for your waist yarn that you're sliding stitches onto than the yarn that you're using for your project. So don't just cut off a piece of the yarn that is the ball of yarn that you're working with for your sweater. Choose waist yarn from a different project. It doesn't really matter how thick or thin this yarn is. I wouldn't use a super bulky yarn, but as long as your yarn is thinner than the needle that you're knitting with, which most yarns will be, you're going to be fine with it. And then you're simply going to slide the number of stitches that the pattern tells you to for the sleeves onto your waist yarn. And so for this particular sample, I'm going to slide 6 stitches onto my waist yarn. So I use a tapestry needle, just slide those stitches onto the tapestry needle, pull the waist yarn through, and then once you've slid all of the stitches onto your waist yarn, you're going to want to tie the two ends of that waist yarn together so that our stitches do not accidentally fall off. You also want to make sure that you have a long enough piece of waist yarn that you can get your arm through there if you are going to be trying on this sweater for yourself, or in the case of the toddler sweater, trying it on a toddler to decide if it is the right size before you keep going. The next thing that the pattern is having you do is cast on a few stitches for what will be the underarm of your sweater. So again, in the finished piece, what we're doing right now is we're casting on the stitches right here at the base of the underarm for our sweater. In order to cast on stitches in the middle of a row, we are going to turn our work. Sorry, I've got my cords all tangled up here. I'm using a circular needle that has a longer cord than necessary, which is why it looks like I've got so much extra cord happening. In order to cast on the stitches in the middle of our row, I am actually going to turn my piece. So if I were just knitting away here, my needle that is in my right hand, so this needle here where our working yarn is connected, I'm going to switch and I'm going to put that needle in my left hand. And now I'm going to, putting the other needle in my right hand, I'm going to do the knitted cast on. And the knitted cast on is almost identical to the knit stitch. So you put your needle in just like you're going to knit, you wrap your yarn around just like you're going to knit, you pull that yarn through just like you're going to knit. The only difference comes right here. We're going to take that new loop that we just created and we're going to put it onto our left hand needle. And we are going to use this to cast on the number of stitches that the pattern said. For the smallest size that the pattern lists, it wants you to cast on 4 stitches. So 2, 3, 4. And then the last step of the cast on is to just switch your needles back again to the hands that they came from. So we're going to take the needle that is in our left hand and we're going to put it in our right hand. And we're going to be ready to carry on knitting on our project. And again, if you're using the magic loop here, you're going to need to shuffle your stitches down onto your needle and off of the other needle. And you'll notice that our working yarn and our cast on stitches that we just put on are on one side, and there's this big gap with just air in the way. Nothing is connected here. That's exactly what it's supposed to look like. When we go ahead and do our first stitch, this is going to be a stitch on the back of our sweater, and that is going to connect things again so that we are working in the round again. And you are going to knit across the number of stitches for the back of your sweater, and you are going to repeat the process on the other side. So when we look at our sweater this way, you can really start to see the shape of it. We've got the neck edge, we've got the point where the sweater gets larger, we have the stitches that are on our waist yarn that will become the sleeves later, and we are going to repeat the same thing on the other side to have sleeves on the other side. So again, on our larger sweater, we've put these sleeve stitches on waist yarn, we've cast on the extra stitches in the armpit area, and now we're working along the stitches on the back before we are going to do the same thing on the other side. And that is how you put sleeve stitches on waist yarn to go back and work them later.